Shalom and welcome to Jewish Insights. So around this time of year, leading up to the high holidays and Yom Kippur, we spend a lot of time thinking about what is the year ahead going to look like? How am I going to be a different person? How is my behavior going to be different? How am I going to clarify what I want to do, the type of person that I want to be? And it's a challenging activity, right, to spend that kind of time and figure out that work. And so what if I told you that by the end of this show, by the end of today's episode, you will have your Yom Kippur action plan for the year ahead right in front of you? Pretty exciting, right? So today I'm thrilled to introduce Rabbi David Jaffe, who is both my friend and my teacher. It's very exciting for me. Rabbi Jaffe and I go back over 10 years, we realized at this point. Mm-hmm. I was a Wexner graduate fellow at the time, and I was almost obsessed with the question of what does it mean to be Jewish outside of the synagogue? So not how do you do Jewish in synagogue, but how do you be a Jewish lawyer? How do you practice law in a Jewish way? How do you parent in a Jewish way? How do you date in a Jewish way? How do you be a friend in a Jewish way? And what were the Jewish values that I might inform that? And I became interested in Musar, Jewish character development. And at the time, a mutual friend of ours, Jen Weinstock, said, you got to speak to Rabbi Jaffe. And I said, okay, who's Rabbi Jaffe? And she introduced me. And he was doing this amazing work at Gann Academy in Massachusetts, where he had developed a whole Mussar curriculum and was teaching students and teachers, and I think parents as well, about Mussar, about integrating Jewish character development into their lives. Eventually, we started studying together, actually, this book, Alei Shur, which is still to this day, my favorite sefer, my favorite book, by Rav Shlomo Volbe. We started a chavruta, a study partnership, which goes to this day. I think we started weekly. Now we make sure to at least meet once a month to study Alei Shur together. And over the years, it led to what I would end up doing at Ramaz. I took Rabbi Jaffe's curriculum and taught it at Ramaz to students, faculty, and parents there, which is a big part of my life. And then today, since then, Rabbi Jaffe has come out with this amazing book, which is called Changing the World from the Inside Out, a Jewish approach to personal and social change, which won the National Jewish Book Award. And Rabbi Jaffe also leads Kirva, an organization dedicated to integrating personal spiritual development along with communal work for social change, which I'll say that again slowly, personal spiritual development alongside communal work for social change, which is like not the easiest or most intuitive thing, but such important work to do, and it reflects the title of the book. Right? How do you change the world from the inside out? How do you approach personal and social change at the same time? In addition to leading Kirva and writing books, Rabbi Jaffe leads wildly popular Teshuva workshops every year during the Zman, the time of Elul, leading up to the holidays, where people come in person to do a practical Teshuva workshop with him. Though I don't usually attend those in person because I'm not near Sharon, Massachusetts. This time of year, I usually set aside time with Rabbi Jaffe to work on my year ahead, to set the tone of what I'm going to work on in the year ahead. And we come up with some sort of plan, a curriculum, a plan, a strategy for myself for the year ahead. And so I thought this year, instead of doing it privately with Rabbi Jaffe, why not do it together? Why not do it together with you, our JBS family, invite you into this opportunity, create an opportunity for you to develop your own spiritual action plan for the year ahead. And so with that, Rabbi Jaffe, welcome.
Thank you very much, Justin. Really great to be here.
I'm so thrilled. This is really a treat for me. I'm learning from my teacher in person, so thank you. I think, I want to get to the practical workshop, but I want to just, place us where we are a little bit first. First, just tell me, a little bit about yourself. How do you end up doing the work that you're doing?
Sure. So I grew up not far from here, from your offices, up in Westchester County. I was a reflective child, as a young person, and I I grew up in a really warm Jewish family that was part of the Reconstructionist movement, conservative movement, and I would do a lot of my reflection sometimes around Rosh Hashanah, but also around the more secular New Year, and be thinking about how do I want to be in this new year, how do I want to grow. And as I became more and more connected with traditional Judaism in my young adult years, I switched all that to being around Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and so, wow, we have amazing tools in our tradition for doing this work. So I think an early just being a more reflective type of person really connected me to all these tools in Judaism that have us, how do we be the best people we can be? That's really what Judaism wants for us, and wants us then to take that and bring it out and make this the best world it can be.
Beautiful. And tell me, just unpack for me a second, you kind of glossed over that shift. How did you end up shifting into traditional Judaism? What does that even mean? Yeah.
Oh, so again, as I said, I grew up in a very warm, highly identified Jewish family. My parents were big, Jewish volunteers in Jewish communal work, and that was always around me. We're not the most observant family growing up, But I had kind of a feel for it, a desire for it, and a real sense of spirituality as a young person. But didn't really, have access almost to that when I was a kid growing up. And it was really, as I became a young adult, actually a major event happened. A good friend of mine passed away from leukemia when I was 20 years old. And you can imagine, that was a very life-changing event for me. And it really woke me up to thinking, what is life all about? Like, what are we really here for? And most 20-year-olds aren't asking themselves that question. But for me, it became very, very pressing and alive. And that really led me to a deeper exploration of Judaism, of my own tradition. And, through some time at Pardes in Jerusalem, which many of your viewers may know, I really came to see that Judaism, and traditional Judaism, Shabbat observance, kashrut, dietary laws, things like that, gave meaning to life that I was really looking for in purpose.
Beautiful. Okay, and then how do you end up teaching Musar at a Jewish day school at Gann Academy in Massachusetts?
Well, so, when I...
And say a word about what I've defined it, but you define Musar as well in that background.
Sure. Musar is applied Jewish ethics is one way to think about it. It's a 1,000-year-old genre in Judaism that came out of Spain and a Jewish Muslim dialogue in Spain in the 11th century. And it's the Musar really, but in some ways it goes back to the Torah. I am holy, so be holy, or love your neighbor as yourself. Those are Musar teachings. Musar is ethics, discipline. It's aligning your life with your highest values. And in the 11th century in Spain, one of the great writers then, Rabbi Ibn Bakuda, he looked and he said, we have these great teachings in Judaism. Be humble, walk with God, all these things, but we don't get instruction how to do it. So he really wrote one of the first books that gave us guidance, meditations, practices. How do you be a humble person? How do you be a courageous person and a trusting person? That began a 1,000-year genre that spread all over the Jewish world and continues to today. And so I went to a yeshiva in Jerusalem called Darchei Noam, or Chapels, it's known as. And the teachers there were very interested in this discipline. And it's kind of a funny story. This is a traditional yeshiva where you're studying Gemara, Talmud for about 15 hours a day.
Wow.
And it can be spiritual, but a lot of it is tort law and like an ox scores a cow, how much do you have to pay? So the students wanted more spirituality. They came to the teachers, they said, can we do more spirituality? And they said, okay, we'll give you a 10-minute Musar class in the morning. So we had 10 minutes. That seemed ridiculous. Like, what? This is like nothing. We went in, and the teacher would read from a Musar book to us about how do you develop these qualities of patience, character, all these things, and it worked. I got totally turned on and excited that Judaism actually has all these teachings for how do we be our best selves. So that's Musar, how I got connected to Musar.
And just to sum that up, so I heard you saying that it's aligning your actions with your highest values. Is that what you said?
Your highest values and the Torah's highest values.
Right. What you're basically clarifying what you're going for, and then some sort of action plan to go there. And you're saying Torah describes what to go for, describes what your ideals might be, but then not until the 11th or 12th century do we have starting to think about a strategy for how to build that.
Yeah.
You're saying. And then this example of being in a traditional yeshiva Chapels, which I know well, and being spending 10 minutes a day. Just give us an example. What's something you would learn in those 10 minutes? Like a saying that you'd sit with, or what would you do?
No, they'd open a book. The teacher would open a Musar book and read from it. And I remember we were reading about trust and developing trust in God, which is something I've always wanted to have more trust in God. And this was giving us instruction of things to do, of what to say, of lines to repeat, as kind of like a meditation. And I just was blown away that, wow, this is really practical instruction to be the person I want to be the Jew I want to be. I want more of this.
Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, so then you become kind of steeped in this area of Musar, and then you end up, what was it like teaching it at a day school at Gann Academy in Massachusetts? What was that?
Yeah, well, one of the people I was introduced to at Chapels was Rabbi Shlomo Wolbe, who the book you mentioned before, and he was really the foremost Musar teacher in Jerusalem before he passed away in 2005. And so when I started teaching in Gann Academy, which is a community pluralistic Jewish day school, high school in the Boston area, I started a small group of students to learn this book, the book you just showed. And they got excited about it. They told their parents got excited about it, came to me, they wanted to learn. So I started teaching the parents. And at the same time, the school was really interested in doing something around character development. And I proposed, let's go to Musar. Since we have a authentic tradition within Judaism about character development, let's use that and not go to some other, secular, form of character development. And so we started that program. Now it's 15 years ago. And I'm very pleased we got a grant from Covenant Foundation to start it off. And I got it still going. I've not been at the school for over 10 years, and the program is still running.
Amazing. And as I said earlier, that was the blueprint for what I did at Ramaz. The same idea, kind of felt like the mission statement of the school said "be a mensch" all over it,
right.
And there wasn't like a dedicated time to focus on becoming a mensch. And so I was part of a group with your help that built, programming for students, teachers, and parents to really create conversation around that process. Amazing.
Yeah, kol hakavod. I was very proud that you did that.
Yeah, it was your legacy. I felt like like in sports, there's like coaching trees, let's say. So I feel like I was part of your coaching tree that I learned from you. Great. So tell me a little bit about Kirva.
So Kirva, so I have also, so this is really a big passion of mine, is the inner development, spiritual development, character development. And another passion of mine is making the world a better place. I grew up with parents and grandparents who were really dedicated to the community. My grandparents were big, Zionists and activists, helping run the founding of the state, and were very involved in Federation. So were my parents. And, I grew up going to Soviet Jewry rallies, in the 80s. And so being involved in the community and making change were always an important thing to me. And I felt like there was a disconnect between, in my own life and others, between this inner work of trying to be the best person I can be and spiritual, connected to God, and trying to make these changes out in the world around advocacy and politics and changing laws and those kind of things. And they really seem like these should go together. The way we're trying to develop ourselves to live as mensches and live with dignity and kavod, that's what we want in the world too. We want that for our neighbors. We want that for our social systems, that they support the dignity of all people. So I started thinking of this as one unified path, one continuum. And so that's what really the book is all about. And then I wrote the book, and a lot of people told me, hey, I got your book, but it's on my night table with 10 other nonfiction books. I was like, okay, that's a good start. I have that pile too.
Yeah.
But I realized I really need to teach this material if it's going to get out there. So we created Kirva. Now it's 5 years we launched, and to really teach how do you do the inner development work in the context of trying to make change out in your community.
Beautiful. And I think it's one of the knocks on Musar, I would say, is this element of you could become so focused on working on yourself that you're not really focused on changing the world. And of course, the knock on the, tikkun olam, fix the world thing sometimes, that you could be so focused on changing the world that you're willing to step on people or, be mean to those who are close to you or not take care of yourself on the way. So trying to come up with a way to, have your inside be like your outside, approach your own work and approach the world externally. Amazing. I love it.
Right on. This is exactly what it is.
Got it. And curious, why is it called Kirva?
Kirva because, again, coming back to Rav Shlomo Wolbe, he has a wonderful essay on in a book called Yemei Ratzon about Elul, about the month we're in actually, about that he says the essential state of the world is one of closeness and connection. And the word kirva means connection or closeness actually in Hebrew. And so he says that that's the essential state of the world. And in Judaism, we understand deeply there really are no strangers because we're all made in the image of God. But we forget that. People forget that. And he says the word in Hebrew for cruelty, achzar, achzariyut, comes from the root kizar, to make someone like a stranger. Zar is a stranger in Hebrew. So when you make someone like a stranger, that's when you could be cruel to them. And you forget about the inherent closeness we have. And he says that the Musar is a discipline to help us remember that essential closeness and overcome that estrangement from others, from ourselves, and God. And I feel like that's what we're trying to do with the organization. So I called it Kirva really after his essay.
I love that. That's so interesting. I've never asked you that before. I'm so happy to learn it. It makes me think of actually, there's a book called Nurture Their Nature that I love. That's also kind of a Musar adjacent book. And in the opening of that, Rabbi Beryl Gershenfeld from Me'or Machon Yaakov Machon Shlomo, he talks about in the Talmud in Brachot and the blessings, I guess, and the tractate about blessings, the blessing you see when you see a multitude of Jews is Chacham Harazim, the knower of secrets. And so he explains that why of all the things when you see a massive multitude? Do you say knower of secrets? And he says there, because a typical person looks out and sees a multitude and sees like a me versus them or an us versus them, and they other those people. Yeah. But when God looks out onto the world, God sees a series of secrets. Every person has a secret that you're looking to uncover. And then he closes that section by saying that Chacham ha-razim, the knower of secrets. What's the opposite of raz? Zar, the stranger, what you were just talking about. So that's our challenge, is you split someone from a secret that you're uncovering when you encounter them, or seeing them as a stranger. And that's what you're trying to struggle, to make less strangers in your life and make more knowers of secrets. So it flows nicely with your idea of bringing people into closeness, and not seeing them as the stranger. Beautiful.
Yeah, Yashikak. It's a beautiful Torah, and that's a great book too. It's something I learned from you. So.
Yeah, that's all right. I got to teach the teacher something. There you go. Beautiful. All right, so I want to do this Teshuva workshop. Yeah. I want to hear you go through it. I think, why don't you set it up for us a little bit here? How does this come about? How does one write a Teshuva workshop, and what's informing your approach?
Sure. So let me give you a little background here, because this workshop, which I've now run for, I think this is the 16th or 17th year, it's really based on a teaching from Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, who we haven't talked about yet in our conversation. So I want to share that with your people at home. Rabbi Nachman of Breslov was one of the great Hasidic masters. Now, the Hasidic movement is different from Musar. The Hasidic movement started in the 18th century in Europe, and it was a Jewish religious revival movement based on a democratization of spirituality, of people being able to access closeness to God, joy, just the delights of being alive, without having to be major Torah scholars, but through storytelling and dance and song and connection with a holy man, which was the tzaddik or the Rebbe. Rabbi Nachman of Breslov is a town in central Ukraine, and most of this was happening in the Ukraine and Poland a little bit. He was the great-grandson of the founder of the movement, the Baal Shem Tov. And so he lived in Ukraine 1772 to 1810. And he told his followers that he wanted them to write their own personal vidui. A vidui literally means an acknowledgement, but it also means a confession. And people may be familiar with that idea of vidui from Yom Kippur. In the traditional Yom Kippur service, there is a vidui that's said 5 times. And people may know that al chet, their chest, and say, for the sins we've done, for this and that and this and that. He said he wanted people
for not telling the truth.
Right.
Like apologize for each thing that you did wrong.
And it's the communal, for the community.
Yeah.
Rabbi Nachman said to his followers, I want you to make your own personal one and come to me on the morning before Rosh Hashanah and basically confess, basically say this to me. We don't think of that much in Judaism.
Yeah,
but
I think of confession like in a church, you're like going into the...
Right, but we have it.
Yeah.
So he had his followers do that for a few years. They would
come to him one at a time and confess
one at a time. And there'd be a line out the door. The stories go, there'd be like 500 people, and a person would come out crying. They'd be with him for like 30 seconds or something, Right. He stopped it at a certain point in his life. We're not exactly sure why, but it's something that in the Breslov Hasidic community has continued for 200 years.
Wow.
And Rabbi Nachman.
And they also all go to their Rebbe, or they all write their own confession?
So people do different things. So when I learned about this, and he has a specific teaching that it says that when we are off the mark, right? When we live in lives that aren't aligned in a certain way, based on a Jewish mystical idea that the whole universe is created out of the Hebrew letters. He says when we are misaligned and miss the mark, we confuse the letters, the Hebrew letters, and they get engraved on our bones. Now this may be a stretch for some of your people watching this. Yeah. It is for me too.
Sure.
But if we just go with the metaphor, that something gets mixed up. And so he says by speaking out how you actually want to live, what you did, and then how you actually want to live, you rearrange those letters. The letters get rearranged, and that's tshuva. And he calls it a vidui divarim. Divarim is a word for speech. So it's an oral confession, a spoken acknowledgement of how you want to grow. What you did and how you want to grow is part of a tshuva process. Beautiful. And that's part of a classic. I mean, Maimonides talks about this as well. This is not some far out thing.
Right. Those two elements, though. What's the thing that I did wrong, and what's the thing that I want to be in the future? It's
exactly.
Both of those.
And they're both very, very important. Okay. And so just a little background from where this workshop comes from. It's from Rabbi Nachman's teaching about making this oral acknowledgement. And so that's the basic idea. for me, because I'm so influenced by both the Breslov Hasidic world and also the Mussar world, I bring together a Mussar sensibility as well with this. And so we'll go through in a little bit the process, but we draw on the different character traits that make up our life and which one are the key ones for us to work on. Those are called midot in Hebrew. A midah is literally a measure of something, so a measure of patience, measure of trust, measure of courage. And then we come up with an action plan after that, something called the Kabbalah in Musar, which is a small action you take. So what we come out with is a oral acknowledgement of what we did, how we want to grow, but with also midot, traits that are key, and an action plan for ourselves to grow. So it's a kind of bringing together of both Musar and this Hasidic tradition.
Great. A couple notes on that. So first, I just want to clarify. So this lens of character traits is an element of Musar. Right? You spoke earlier about kind of setting a goal for yourself and then trying to bring that to life through action. So a goal might be like, I don't know, to align my will with God's will or whatever. That's a lofty goal, let's say. Right. But the different lens that you're raising now is the lens of character traits. So it's like either be more patient or I guess like do X but use patience and kindness to get to X or something like that, right? So say a little bit about that.
Sure, and when we go through it, I'll give some instruction, but the way Musar is structured is through the character traits, the framework of the character traits. And so, say I want to be speaking more kindly to my wife, and I'm noticing we're getting some spats and kind of stuff like that. There's an issue of me just being more respectful, speaking more kindly to her. Well, the way it would work in Musar is I wouldn't just say I want to speak more kindly to my wife. It would say, what's the midah? What is the trait that seems to be most alive, or traits that are most alive here? And so one trait could be kavod. Kavod is dignity, respect, and honor. And maybe my trait of dignity, respect, and honor for her is a little bit weak and needs to be strengthened a little bit. And so to make this a Musar practice, I would then focus on kavod. I would read, Rav Olbe, I'd read other books about this trait, and then I would take on small challenges around the trait. So one challenge could be that I'm going to point out or notice and then say something positive to my wife every day when we have dinner together, and notice something I'm appreciative for. So it would be a small action, and then I would do reflection about it, which in Hebrew is called cheshbon hanefesh, or soul accounting. At the end of the day or the next morning, I would reflect in a journal or just in my own thought. How did I do? How did I do with that? I wanted to say that thing to my wife. Did I do that or not? And that makes up a Musar practice of those elements. But the trait is key, because we're working on the trait that develop more kavod.
Beautiful. So again, the goal I establish is I want to work on my relationship with my wife, let's say, and then there might be different lanes. I want to be more patient, I want to be more kind, I want to be more enthusiastic, and you're saying, maybe in this person's case, the lane that they want to focus on is kavod, dignity and respect, and then you'd say, okay, well, how do I get there? Do some studying and reviewing of the material so I know what it's about, develop some sort of action plan. Okay, once a day I'm going to do X, Y, Z, and then it's important to, we have to collect our data, do some sort of writing down about it. Beautiful, okay, great.
Exactly.
And then the other thing that strikes me very interestingly is that I would argue that it's, at least in the circles I've traveled, it's less common to have people who study both Chassidut and Musar. Actually, the only other person that comes to mind, another favorite person of mine, Rabbi Zev Reichman, the rabbi of ours in Englewood, who came on to talk about Rav Kook once here. He also was like steeped in Musar and steeped in Chassidut. But how do you think about those two side by side? Because I think when I was in yeshiva, there was like the guys who like Musar and the guys who like Chassidut, and you're playing in both.
Yeah, they tend to be. They can be very separate, and they certainly are. And historically, they certainly are. I think for me, as someone who really wanted to be close to God and wants to live as aligned as I can, I was looking for who's talking about that and where are places to grow.
Yeah.
And Musar and Chassidut are two amazing traditions that offer that. So, and because I didn't grow up firmly in one school or the other, I don't feel like I have allegiances necessarily. Right. So for me, they come together. I think a funny story though, I was feeling a little strange about it. I'm like, how could I be studying Rabbi Nachman and this? And I go to the town of Uman for Rosh Hashanah for Rabbi Nachman's gravesite every year is part of my...
This is in Ukraine.
In the Ukraine, part of my being part of the Breslov community and going to a Breslov yeshiva in Israel. We go there as part of our practice as a pilgrimage to Rabbi Nachman's gravesite. He asked his followers to do that before he died. And so for 214 years now, people have been doing that. And that's where we do that vidui I talked about before.
Wow.
And
wait, what does that look like? So everyone, first of all, everyone's descending on Ukraine around Rosh Hashanah every year. That's what it is. Because he said to do it on Rosh Hashanah, or that's when it's...
on Rosh Hashanah.
Okay, and everyone's doing like their viduis out loud, or like just how does that work?
So,
I assume you're not waiting online one at a time.
No,
right?
well, yeah, it's not there.
It's a big crowd.
His grave is there. So yeah, you're packed in there.
How many people? Just out of curiosity.
I mean, it's been growing. So, and now, you know, with the war and things, it's different. But it's probably about 35,000.
Wow.
Maybe 40 at some points it hit
People
that.
fly to Ukraine for Rosh Hashanah every year.
Yeah.
Wow.
There's a whole long story. We've done enough time here, but it's a long story behind it. But almost no one went during the Soviet era, and then since the fall of the Soviet Union, it's been growing. It's about 35,000, 40,000 people. So people descend on the gravesite on the morning of Rosh Hashanah, not Rosh Hashanah, on Erev Rosh Hashanah, and are, the Talmud says things like, "You've never seen prayer if you haven't seen this. You've never seen prayer if you haven't seen this."
Wow.
Like this is, people are just opening their hearts, and it is an amazing thing, and it's a very, very important part of my spiritual practice. But I got to this by saying that my Musar and Hasidic piece, so I'm there one Rosh Hashanah, and I'm feeling a little guilty. How could I be studying Musar, but I'm also Breslov?
Right.
And I'm at a Friday night dinner, a whole group of very traditional Breslov people. And they're all talking about how they study Rabbi Nachman, and then they break out Alei Shor, and they study Rav Wolbe. And the Musar is so important for them, how they bring them together.
Wow.
So this is not an isolated thing. A lot of people make these combinations.
Oh, I'm thrilled to hear that. That's really interesting. All right. Yeah, no, and we've, over the years, I came in through the Mussar door, Alei Shor, but we've learned a little bit of Rabbi Nachman together, and I've learned with Rabbi Nachman as well, so I'm building up that side of my brain, I guess, or my heart, I should say. But, beautiful. Okay. All right, so without further ado, take it away. Lead us on a Tashuva workshop.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you for inviting me to do this with your audience. So what we'll do here over the next 25 so minutes is I'm going to walk you through a series of some guided meditation, some journal prompts, some just things to think about that at the end we're going to come out with at least one practical thing to work on for Teshuva that you could bring into the year. And to be honest with you, one is enough, really. If you have too many, you're really not going to do them. So if you choose this one thing, there's a good shot that this time next year, you're going to have actually moved on that one thing. So as I said, this is going to be creating this acknowledgement. We're going to base it in these midot, these soul traits. And so let's do this. Let's start with a guided meditation. And so I invite you, Justin, I invite your audience to relax, sit back, get yourself in a relaxed position, and I'll be saying some prompts. And if you feel comfortable closing your eyes, you can do that, or just you can kind of look down and focus there. So let's take 3 relaxed in-breaths and out-breaths right now together. Now this meditation is going to go through 3 areas of life. It's going to go through your self-care, meaning your body, your emotions, how you're doing. It's going to go through your relationships, and it's going to go through your spirituality. So let's start with joy and gratitude, and with yourself and your self-care. So just think about how yourself, your body, your emotions, your personal being. What are sources of joy and gratitude that you're feeling right now? Either for something in your body or something just about your personal being right now. What's a source of joy and gratitude? Take a moment, think about that.
And I'll just say, I don't know if you want me to answer, but I'll just say, for me, I'm a year plus since back surgery, and I'm just like, you're helping me lean into feeling joy and gratitude that everything is working, thank God.
Wonderful.
My back is working.
So I'm so glad to hear that. Really feel that joy. Feel that joy. The actual feeling of it's very important. And then next, what is something that's out of alignment? Speaking of backs, what's something out of alignment, or where you may have missed the mark and want to align or repair more this coming year? Having to do anything with your body or yourself, your being. Something where you might have missed the mark or want more alignment.
I want to treat my body to healthier food in the coming year. In healthier quantities.
Okay. Okay, great. So make a note of that. right now. You can make a mental note or just some note that that's something that came up for you because you're going to want to pursue that a little bit later. Okay, let's take a couple relaxed breaths. We're going to switch to the next domain. So now we're thinking about our relationships. What is a source of joy and gratitude that you have in a particular relationship or relationships, either right now or sometime thinking about this year?
I feel like those moments when I'm like locked in with my family, where I'm like really present, regardless of the context, but if I'm present with one of my children or my wife or another family member.
Great. So really, again, like feel that joy of what it's like to be locked in, playing with a child or with the whole family together. Just really notice, let that really, feel it on your heart. Okay, and then same question is, what's something that's out of alignment? Maybe you missed the mark and need to align or repair more in the coming year regarding a relationship or relationships. What's something particular?
I think when I get overly focused on the future in relationships, like focused on like where I'm trying to get in a relationship, or focused on, helping my kids towards something that's in the future, a little bit less present, or even worse, being distracted, like, being with someone and thinking about a totally different category. I'm at work thinking about something else, or I'm with family thinking about work or something along those lines.
Okay, so can you get a clear picture of at least one of those and what happens in that moment?
I mean, the worst case scenario is that I'm with someone and I'm looking at my phone because I'm somewhere else, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's just important to get these pictures, these clear pictures. Again, that's and for your audience, that's a really classic Musar technique, is you want to get a clear picture of the thing, because in a few minutes we're going to work on transforming it. Okay, now let's move to our third area, spirituality. Let's just take two cleansing breaths, then we'll move into that. Okay, now thinking about spirituality, and that can mean a lot of things to people. Possibly Torah, your relationship to Torah, relationship to God, relationship to spirit, greater, intelligence. People think of these things in different ways. Where have you felt joy and gratitude in any area in that relationship?
What's coming up for me is recently a few times preparing for prayer, like taking a few minutes before I rush into prayer and try to get through prayer, and just sitting with what I'm about to do for a few minutes. I feel like that feels like a really healthy step in that area of my life.
Wonderful. So Rav Wolbe calls that, hachana, preparation, which is a classic Jewish practice of preparing for prayer. That's wonderful. It's a joy there. So yeah, you want to feel that joy. And then the final question is, what's something that's out of alignment, or where you may have missed the mark or want more alignment and repair in relation to spirituality in any way?
So many.
For our purposes for now, choose one.
I think not setting. I guess if I had to describe it, not connecting Torah study to spirituality enough, if that makes sense.
Sure, and that's one of the Musar came to, and Rabbi Nachman also, these spiritual disciplines came to really address that. So this is maybe if you wanted to take that on as a practice forward, but you're familiar with this practice. For the people at home, we have a practice in Musar called hispilus, which means hitpa'alut in Hebrew, which is activating a Torah source by bringing emotion to it. So it comes out of the head of just being a Torah source and into the heart, into the soul through repetition and active repetition. Rabbi Nachman had a practice of taking a piece of Torah and turning it into prayer called Torah to Tefillah. And so we have good Jewish spiritual technologies for the issue you're bringing up. Okay, so wonderful. So that was the scanning and kind of getting some raw material for what could be part of a spiritual action plan for the year. So now we're going to move to the next piece, but we want to think of, choose one item for out now. You named a bunch of really powerful things that can make up a good tshuva over the year, but for our purposes now, one item, one of those things that you want to work with and workshop over the next few minutes we have together.
Okay.
And I could say for the audience, this is my, one thing I'm bringing is I have two younger brothers, and we don't stay in touch as much as I really like. So the thing coming up for me is that I don't follow through on my own desire to maintain better regular contact with my two younger brothers and their families. I wait for them or my parents to take initiative in bringing us together. So that's something I'm looking at for tshuva for the year.
All right, so I got to choose one from here. There's a lot of different things. One of the things that I wanted to work on. I think the one that came up to me around like being more present with my family. And the image was me kind of like my kids are talking to me and I'm responding to a quick work email, or like I just got to get this text out because this person's waiting for me, or that kind of thing. Trying to do less of that and be more deeply present with whoever I'm in front of. But let's start with the people I live with.
Great. All right, that's a great one to work on. Good. Okay, and for folks at home, I would say same thing. Like for right now, choose one thing that you want to make the focus. Maybe several came up during the meditation we just did, but for now, choose one thing. And then you can review this and go over this again at home. I'll suggest to go over these different ones. But for right now, we're doing that one thing.
Great.
Okay? So just again, I want to review the midot, the word I used before. A midah is a measure, and that's how Musar is framed around these, really they're character traits, all the different character traits. Rabbi David Lapin has a wonderful analogy where he says that a pilot is flying a plane and wants to tell how high the plane is. It goes to an instrument. That instrument's called the altimeter. He says we as humans have instruments as well. We have our bodies, our emotions, our relationships, our spirituality. Those give us data about how we're doing. So when the pilot wants to go down, the pilot's not going to hit the altimeter. That's not going to do anything. Same with us as people. If I want to treat my wife better relationship with my kids or whatever, I'm not going to press on them because they're just giving me data about how I'm doing. So the pilot's going to hit the control button, the down button. For us, we have our traits, our character traits, our midot. Those are our controls, and those are what we have to manipulate and move to grow. Musar is a discipline about manipulating those character traits to get the outcomes we want in our relationships and in our life.
So I just want to pause on that and just notice what you're saying, which is the idea that kind of the people that we're interacting with kind of give us data about where we are internally, but really we need to work internally and not work on them, if that makes sense. Beautiful.
No, they need to work on them.
Yeah.
And if your children, they'll grow, But yes, we need to work. Musar's move is always to work on the midot and then interact and see. Maybe there's maybe someone does need to change their behavior, but often it's us. So this next step is we want to be thinking about what are the traits? What are some key traits? So let's take your example. I'll use mine just for example, and then we'll hear yours. So for me, if thinking about traits, I'm thinking about responsibility. Achrayut is a midah, is a trait, and these traits work on a continuum. So with
Again, and this is reflecting to the question of your relationship with your brothers.
that's what I'm coming back to.
Great.
Exactly. Like, how do I follow through on my desire to have better connection with them?
And you're saying one of the character traits that emerges when you think about that question is responsibility.
That's one.
Achrayut. Okay.
There could be a number of different ones, but
Great.
that's one that comes up. And again, these traits are on a continuum of over-responsibility, which is not a great thing, and also just being a slacker and not taking any responsibility. We always try to always be somewhere in the middle. Occasionally in Musar, you need to be more extreme, but most of the time somewhere in the middle. So what would be an appropriate responsibility for me to take? That's going to be a key meta for me to think about, to study, and have really central in my mind during the years I work on this. Any come up for you when you're thinking about your...
Yeah. So I'm thinking through what is causing me in that moment to feel like I need to look at my phone even though I'm with my kids. So I think one probably has to do with boundaries, right? This idea of like, well, when am I working and when am I with kids?
Okay.
And those things, seamlessly go into each other. On a Sunday I'm checking stuff, so
Yep.
there's probably a boundaries question. So what is
Right.
that? What's the
Boundary I say is gevura.
Okay.
I mean, gevura is strength, but also can be boundaries.
So like being strong enough to like set boundaries.
Yep.
Okay, beautiful. I think another is sometimes feeling like there's always more work to do. There's always more work to do. I have to do that work. So I can't take a break from it. I need to get it out. What's
Maybe a couple there. One could be a bitachon, which means trust, and kind of trusting yourself, trusting the process, trusting God, that you're putting the work in. Like, you have to let go at a certain point. It's not all like you, which is hard. And especially the CEO,
Right.
You are but still, bitachon. Or I'd say histapkut is an interesting midah. It means enoughness. When is enough? When have I done enough work? When have I, so that's another possibility.
Wow. All right. So we're putting together a little bit of a team here. So the first was gvura, like setting boundaries for myself. Almost, it sounds like, I think of the word gvura, I think of almost forcefully, like being like put up a boundary for myself.
Yeah.
And then bitachon, which I think about a lot. That one makes sense to me. The idea of having trust the process, like, breathe a little bit. You don't need to do this right now. It'll all work out. And histapkut, you said at the end.
Yeah. Enoughness.
Enoughness. That's like, by the way, I've never studied that one before. That's really like a whole, I feel like that could be healthy for a lot of people.
Yeah.
That's a really hard question. What is enough of anything? Enoughness, more beautiful.
Exactly.
Wow. Okay. And is there something that's also like about like attention and controlling? Is there a midah that you think of when I think about just like having more control over your attention, not even just setting times? Like, I feel like we're in an era where seder.
Yeah,
Okay.
seder, which is order, and the idea, classic Musar perspective on that is your ability to put your attention where you choose to put your attention.
I feel like that's also like a huge one right now. It's like everyone's vying for our attention 100 miles an hour.
Right.
And even when you think you're doing one thing, you end up doing another thing.
Right.
Right. So trying to take back control of your attention.
Right.
That's really cool. Okay. All right, so I got 4.
You have, and that we would call, the term I learned from Alan Marinis, soul curriculum. You have a nice soul curriculum there.
Okay, I'm just writing them down. So we have Seder, which was the idea of order, controlling my attention. Histapkut.
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 Like,
I've never heard that word before.
Maspeak, which means enough.
Maspeak. Histapkut,
Yeah.
okay. Enoughness, gvura, which is the setting of boundaries, and bitachon, which was trust. Okay, great, thank you.
So those are the traits that are going to make up your spiritual action plan.
My soul curriculum.
Your soul curriculum.
And my spiritual action plan.
For this year. So, okay, good. We got those. That's good. But that's not enough.
Okay.
We need to do 2 more steps.
Okay.
One step is this is teaching in the Talmud that we can actually we can kind of transform things we've done so they will be positive. And so what we're going to do in this next piece is visualize the situation you have there, and I do it for my own situation, and how do you want it to look? If it could totally be transformed into the way you want it to be, what does that look like? And get a clear picture. So I have some prompts. I'm gonna guide you through a meditation here of doing that. We'll do that just with this one thing for the sake of time. We'll just do that one, and then we'll do the action steps. So we'll be able to do this in a few minutes.
Great.
Okay, so again, let's take 2 relaxed in-breaths, out-breaths. Again, I invite you at home, if you want to close your eyes or just, you can look down. Now choose that item that you're working on for Teshuva. Scan it in your mind. What happens as a result of not being in alignment or missing the mark in the way that you described? What was going on, what goes on when you think or do this thing?
My daughter Caroline says, "Dad, can you please look up from your phone? I'm talking to you."
Okay, really see that, okay? Now, imagine yourself in this situation again, all the same elements, but now you can make it different. Envision how you want it to go. What is that vision? What will things really look like if you could be aligned? Get a clear, detailed picture.
This happened at dinner time last night, actually. So
Okay.
I guess my daughter Caroline is very into imaginative play. And so instead of me kind of getting food to her in a way that I'm trying to do two things at once, I'm like fully bought into the dinner experience. I'm like, "Welcome to Chateau Justin," and I offer her the food that we're serving that night, and I give her a menu, and I bring it over to her, and we have conversation, and I'm like in it with her, and like she's loving it, and I'm loving it, and we're being playful, and she's enjoying the food, and we're having a special experience together.
Awesome. Stay with that. Let it make an impression on your mind and your heart, that experience you had. Now, what do you need for things to go differently next time so you could actually get that result more? What needs to change?
My phone needs to not be in the room. I need to do some hachana, to use that word you said before, some preparation. I need to do some thinking in advance. Like the same way I might prepare for a meeting, I'm about to have this dinner experience with my daughter. Instead of working backwards and trying to survive, can I do some thinking in advance? And then being totally honest, I'm also trying to figure out how I navigate that with, all the kids at the table, and like, can I do that for all of them at once, or is it impossible to give them each the attention that they deserve?
Great. Okay, so great. So you got three things there: getting the phone out of the room, preparation, and then kind of thinking through the different children, how to work with them. Okay. You may have just named this, but what are one or two practical actions that you can take that are going to move you in the direction of achieving your vision?
Yeah, so I think phone can't be in the kitchen with me, and I gotta, think before we get to that moment and have some sort of action plan that I think will land.
Okay, so let's come out of the meditation. Great work, first of all. Fantastic.
Thank you for my guide and my teacher.
Yeah, and again, I hope people at home also have a chance to be seeing these and thinking these things. So now we're going to move to the last step, which is an action plan. So what you have now is the item for Teshuva, the lack of attention and having attention on with your children. That's the item for Teshuva you want to repair. You have a vision of how you want it to work, and really beautiful vision of what you did with your daughter the other night, very concrete. Like that's how you'd like it to be, very clear vision. You have some midot that are key here. You have some character traits that would make up the soul curriculum. And now we're going to get to the practical actions to take. In Musar, these are called kabbalot, which are basically a small challenge or action.
Okay.
And so these small challenges are not anything. They're particular kinds of actions. And there's 4 steps that I found very helpful for these, or 4 features of them. One is that they're concrete, meaning you can tell you did it or not. It's not like I thought something. It's like I actually did this thing or not. 2 is they're small. It's not too hard. You can it's very doable. 3 is they're time bound, not all day long. It's like this one thing I'm doing once during the day. That's an important Mussar principle. We keep things small. And 4 is it's attached to an already established routine, which makes it more likely that you're going to do it. So let's think about 1 or 2 actions for you to try to achieve this that would fit those criteria. And again, for an audience, please think this through for yourselves as well and yours.
Like a practical action that I could take. I mean,
you already said a couple.
I mentioned dinner time, which I feel like is like that's a routine.
Yep, it's a routine.
It happens every day.
Yep.
I can certainly check whether or not my phone was out. That's an answerable
action.
question.
Yep.
did I think about dinner before dinner? I think, is it also concrete? That's not as, it's harder to manage that. But did I have a plan coming in?
Yeah, I have to pull, right, I'm making a plan coming in, yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
What else? What else do I need? Am I there? Or I need.
Those would be. Let's go with those, because if you did those two things consistently, you are going to see changes here. So let's just go with those for now. They're really perfect. So your Kabbalah, and the me that it's related to. I mean, there's a bunch of me. I mean, it's Seder. It's creating order. It's Histapkut, enoughness. You're putting this stuff aside for right then.
Right.
But I would say the Seder piece is really big, and the Gevura piece, the boundaries. Those are the two that you're really working on with these things. If we had more time, and I encourage you to work on this afterwards, and also for your audience too, I encourage you to work on these after the session's over. But let's for now go with those. Those are the main midot you're working on, is Seder and Gevura and boundaries. And the practical actions are going to be putting the phone somewhere else, not bringing it into the dining room or wherever you guys eat, and then making like a 2-minute or whatever long period before you come in that you're going to sit and just sit quiet yourself before coming into dinner. And then you'll check in on that during your Cheshbon Nefesh, your reflection. You'll see how you did. And that would be that's your spiritual action plan to work on getting this vision.
Beautiful.
That was great work. Yeah.
Thank you. All right, I got. So I hope I hope our JBS family enjoyed that. It's there's a way to do this a little bit. It's not as overwhelming Yom Kippur to kind of be like, how can I do something practical that's going to last? I guess we'll have to circle back a year from now and see how it landed. Right. I want to pick up on one thing that you mentioned, and with your permission, I hope, and you can say no if you want.
Sure.
Which is, you mentioned this idea of kind of turning Torah into, you mentioned Hispailut, the idea of like in the Mussar world and also in the Rabbi Nachman world turning into prayer. Would you be comfortable like doing an example of each of those for us?
Sure, I can do that. I want to say something though first. I want to let people know that, so what you can do with this, if you created this thing, is bring it into your prayer. So it's related. So I create an index card. Which is scribbled with a ton of words. You can't see it. But I create an index card like this, and I put it in my prayer book. And I come into Yom Kippur services with what we just did, like what you just did and spelled out. I have that written down on an index card for me. And I've done mine for my relationship with my brothers and all those different steps. And I come in, and after the community finishes the public, acknowledgement, vidui, for the sins we've done, all that. At the end of that, I'll take my index card out and I'll say my own. I'll say my own prayer, and I'll do that throughout the services. And then I have this thing in my journal all year, and at least I try. I don't always, but on Rosh Chodesh, on the new Jewish month, I'll take it out and I'll read it. I'll be like, oh wow, that's what I wanted to do this year. And some will say, hey, I'm really doing this stuff, and others not. And some of these I'll really build into my daily practice throughout the year. So it becomes not just a New Year's resolution that you think about for a week and then it's gone. It becomes an actual practice you're doing all year to align yourself with your highest values and the highest values of God and Torah and how we really want to be in the world. So, it's a real gift you've given yourself of having to do it.
I love that.
Okay, so that's I just want to finish that piece up. So Torah there's a, I'll do a live example of it for you, okay?
Thank you.
There's a teaching that's been very touching my heart a lot recently. It's been such a hard year for the Jewish people. This has been such a hard year for us and our neighbors and it's just, and we're coming to the holidays, we're coming up to 10/7, and it's like intense. And how are we going to hold this? Judaism has so much wisdom about holding joy and grief at the same time. And Rabbi Nachman of Breslov has a teaching. He uses an analogy of a circle dance. Imagine you're at a wedding, you're at something, people are dancing in a circle, and there's that one person standing outside, kind of looking kind of sad. So you go over and you bring them into the circle, and hopefully you ask them. But sometimes if you know them well, you can just kind of grab them, bring them in. And being in the circle with the dance can sometimes really alleviate their sadness. So Rabbi Nachman says that analogy is really, we can think about ourselves and our own inner lives and our own inner happiness or sadness. And he's like, when you feel that joy inside yourselves, the sadness can go away, and we really need to actually go try to get it and bring it back in. We need to make sure we're integrating ourselves and not cutting things off and bring it back in. And so when we're in the joy of the holidays, if we can touch that, it's a time to actually also feel the sadness too. Not that they have to be totally separate, but these things we can hold them both. And what joy enables us to do is have a bigger heart, and then have a broken heart, and be able to do the grieving we need to do is with joy, and not say there's always joy, even in the worst times. But it helps us actually be able to feel the grief. And we need to hold all those things. So that's a teaching for Rabbi Nachman I've been thinking about a lot coming into the holidays. So the way it works in Breslov with Torah to Tefillah is that's a teaching. It's an intellectual teaching. It's in a book, and I learned it, I studied it. But I want to internalize it. I want to make it my own.
Sure.
So I would say, I remember doing this when I was in yeshiva. I would run outside back of the yeshiva and then start praying, And so here it would look like this. So I would say, "Oh Hashem, God, please let me hold both joy in my heart. I feel so much joy for being alive. It's amazing, amazing to be alive and be in this world. And I'm so brokenhearted. There's so much pain, so much killing, so much fear. Please, God, please protect all my people. Please protect all of us. And I feel so much sadness over what's been lost this year. Mamash Hashem, please, God, let me bring that together in my heart and hold all of it, and really serve you, God, with a full heart." And I would go on and on and on like that. But that's the way taking a Torah teaching can look like, and making it into prayer.
Wow. And what a beautiful message, thinking about, you think of Yom Kippur and this year, and the hard year that it's been for the Jewish people, and for God for that matter, and trying to navigate that and kind of bringing the pain into the joy and the joy into the pain and making it one circle is that's a beautiful aspiration to go for. Thank you for that.
It's a blessing for all of us and for your audience. May we be able to live that.
Amen. Rabbi Jaffe, this has been such a treat. I have my soul curriculum and my action plan for the year ahead. We'll check in about it, and I guess I won't wait a year. I'll make a card and put it in my siddur, and hopefully I'll see it every day and look at it. And I just want to thank you for coming in, and may we all be blessed with a happy, a healthy new year. May the blessings and the prayers that you just requested come true. And I look forward to keep talking. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. Gemara Chazman Tov, everyone.
Amen. Amen.